Support for WUWM podcast comes from Hop Harvest and Vine and Good Harvest Market in Milwaukee, part of One Destination, combining farm-to-table dining, local craft beers, and organic groceries under one roof. More at goodharvestmarket.com.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Joy Powers. Today we check in with a homeowner who suffered damage during the flooding last month. Then we'll learn about a project in Milwaukee's 30th Street corridor aimed at reducing future flooding.
It's a really good solution, kind of a middle ground solution. It puts this area back into a fairly natural state of water management, the best we can, and still preserving homes.
Plus, Senator Tammy Baldwin will talk about her Go Pack Go Act, which could ensure all Wisconsinites can see Packers games on TV.
They don't get to watch in-state programming, and that may be a Packer game. It also may mean that they're not getting access to local news and events.
All of that is coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Joy Powers, and thank you so much for joining us. Last week, President Trump approved $30 million in federal assistance for people impacted by devastating floods in August. That means residents in Milwaukee, Waukesha, and Washington counties whose homes or property were damaged by the floods may get some relief. One of those homeowners trying to rebuild is Wauwatosa resident Jessica Young. WUWM Eric Vaughn fellow Maria Peralta Ariano spoke with Young the day after her home was flooded. She joins us once again to explain what the last month has been like for her family.
So the last time we spoke, it was about a month ago, and you kind of detailed the destruction done in your basement, but also the events following after. You guys were staying at a hotel. You had your son, and you guys were still going through things. Insurance wasn't covering. What was your guys' journey like while you were trying to rebuild your house and making it livable?
Yeah, it's such a surreal, whirlwind. We had started staying at a hotel. We didn't, initially we didn't know how long, I'm like, I don't know what this process takes. So we only booked, I think, 2 nights. And then by the time we tried to extend the stay, everything was sold out. And then we tried calling other hotels and everyone else was sold out. And so it was like the day that we had to leave our hotel, we were on the wait list. We had to try to figure out where to live. And we had friends offering and for us to stay places, so that's been so wonderful. And we're just so blessed to have people making those offers. But, especially with a toddler too, and trying to have some normalcy for him and space for him to play, but not, maybe get in the way of, if someone doesn't have kids and they have all the breakable stuff out, I don't want to impose on anyone. It was a quick fix. We ended up trying to stay at a hotel that was just, kind of made us uncomfortable. And so we ended up staying with a friend about 30 minutes away. And that, even though that was a longer drive, we were really lucky because then also we didn't have to pay for the hotel stay. So that was nice. I think I'm at a loss for words. I still am not fully processing, day to day what happened. But I would say that every day, there was somebody willing to help, like a family member, a neighbor. We had some people just driving around saying they're from nearby and how could they help. And we had some local businesses that were handing out gift cards or seeing if we needed cleaning supplies. I know that the Red Cross came through, gave us some stuff. And there was one neighbor who I think is on the board of the Tosa Farmers Market. And she was just taking notes of what each person needed and then trying to share resources with the other people. Cause she came to my house saying that my other neighbor needed some help, people to actually bring stuff outside. And my nephew, who's in college, is college aged, was going to bring his football buddies to do some stuff at my house. But luckily we didn't need it anymore. So then he helped my neighbor. And it was kind of a lot of that every day, kind of forgetting house stuff and honing in on Elliot when we picked him up at night, and then the long drive to our friend's house, getting him to sleep, seeing, how you just kind of handling the emotional impact of that. And then bringing him to school every day and then going back to the house. And I felt like a project manager. I think sometimes I felt guilty because I was on my computer or on my phone when we were able to have a couple of friends come and help us with stuff, or people in the community, because it was like apply for FEMA, apply for possible like American Red Cross funding. I had a friend who was so gracious and set up a GoFundMe, and there were offers of help. So it was like trying to manage, say yes to anybody, right? And then like trying to plan, when can they come, when can they help, this person's going to drop off a meal. I was trying to keep track of like who to say thank you to and what to do. And so it was just, and trying to track, what are we throwing away? What did we get rid of? What are like the necessities? Trying to plan for when my son can come back, hoping that like the piles of stuff would be gone by the time we brought him to see the house, because otherwise he's seeing all of his toys, sad and dirty at the end of the road, and he's going to want them. It was really, really surreal. There were multiple days that the city blocked off roads so that all of the trucks could come and pick up everything. It was like a multiple truck. It was almost like a crane machine, like a toy crane game. They had like a crane that would pick up stuff from our yard and like put it over into the dump truck or the garbage truck. And it was all up and down the street. And like everybody, all of my neighbors, everyone was home. Everyone had to be. And just to look down and just see 10-foot well, maybe I'm being dramatic, like 5 to 7 foot piles of our lives out on our yards has been absolutely surreal. Now this week we just moved in this weekend. So it's been a few weeks of getting the stuff out, drying the house out, pulling all of the drywall and insulation and the door frames and the molding and just so many things that I wasn't even thinking. And then trying to make the floor that wasn't damaged, like the main floor, livable. So if we could come back home, we could. And that's been wild. I'm not trying to replace every single item because I can't financially and like sentimentally, all that stuff. I was able to go through some photos, and I would say we're kind of at the point now. We're at the point where everything's dried out. The antimicrobial stuff was done. The walls have been gutted where they need to be. We have someone replacing the flooring and kind of doing the thing in the basement with all the unfinished part of the laundry area had like paint bubbling up from the concrete floor. And so they're like fixing that. I had a friend donate their dryer to me. We had to order a new washer, and the heater, the furnace, the water heater, furnace, AC, all of those are back in. So it's like, it feels slow because we just moved back in, but the amount of things that have happened in the last couple of weeks are crazy when you think about it, right? Just like a home remodel or like building a new house kind of that you weren't really planning on doing. So so everything's kind of gutted as if we're building it a bit from scratch. I started to go back to work. I would say I went back to work a little bit last week, and my husband's had to go back more full time. I'm sort of like, maybe 3/4 of the time doing what we can. It's going to be a little bit easier now that we have a shorter drive. We're back home and have a shorter drive to Elliot's school, but it's just been constant planning and not being able to think of anything else, really. I think the first time we did something not related to the house and fixing things was this last weekend, or it was Labor Day. We took my son and my mom to the zoo, and it was so refreshing to have like a fun, positive, family bonding time that wasn't, we've definitely had babysitters and other people kind of taking care of my son while we were doing stuff so that he wasn't in the danger zones. I think we really needed that time to sort of repair and come together and, make sure he has like a safe, fun space to reconnect with us. I think that isn't the house, because he's still, we've been here for a few days, and I picked him up from his cousin's house yesterday, and he's like, "Is the house fixed?" I'm like, "Oh, honey, it's gonna be a while." He's adjusting really, really well, but every day he's kind of like, "Hey," he's starting to ask the questions now. I think now that he's living in the house, like, how did water get in here? So I had to figure out like, how do you say this to us, like an almost 4-year-old, so they're not scared, but they know the logistics. It's been a lot. So trying to organize and trying to get back into life. Like I'm trying really hard to let go of my perfectionism and my like not jumping back into work 100%, or if I am, that I'm not putting too much pressure on myself, because it's a full-time job to be getting our house in working order, and that there's still just going to be kind of months of stuff. Like we're still finding glass in the yard where all of our junk was, so trying to make it a safe place for Elliot to play again, that there isn't, stuff like that in our lawn or on the street, nails, stuff like that. And for our neighbors too, like if we come across it when we're walking, we're picking up debris and trying to get it out of the street or where people could step on it. So it's been a lot of that, a lot of focusing on that, and then at least trying to do like an hour a day or like once a week where it's not something about the house, right? It's like playing or reading or seeing a family member not at our home. I think I might have to, like I work from home, and so I think I'm going to have to start working at a coffee shop or something because, looking at the chaos is a lot when I have to work. So, I don't know. I'm still all jumbled up in my head, I think.
You had mentioned filling out something for FEMA.
I did. I filled out FEMA, right away because obviously I knew that could be a possibility. It wasn't a super difficult thing, but it was hard to I think list all of the things that were a loss, right? And I don't know. I don't really know. Maybe it'll be months from now. Obviously, it would be amazing if it was sooner. In the meantime, we're trying to get loans and trying to do the least amount of things. Like what are the necessities, because we don't want to be too crazy right now. And then hopefully, FEMA can come back and we can maybe pay off the loans.
From here out, what are some of the longer haul things that we need to get taken care of? And also just emotionally, are you expecting some lasting effects from this?
It's so funny, just even hearing a question of like, emotionally, mentally, how are you going to, what do you think? It makes me want to cry because it's like, I feel like I'm still in, I don't know if it's fight or flight or action mode, right? Things aren't going to be done for my house to be fully functional, probably for a couple of weeks. And then I think, from there, it's like, it'll be amazing when like the dust settles and we can take some of the plastic dividers down and everything. But, then it's like, well, we've already spent that money, but it will be wonderful to do some of the like the grading on our lawn to draw water away from the house. Not that helps in like 3 feet of water. I know that's not, but I just little things like that where I'm like, what do we do now? Is there any sort of preventative thing, waterproofing? I don't know, like sandbags that we could possibly help for if this happens again. And then possibly applying for flood insurance, which I don't know how it'll happen, if it'll happen, because again, my house wasn't on the floodplain, but it's like, get the house back to where there are contractors and people always in here, right? So that we can like live here and be here. And then is there anything we can do to prepare, like get insurance, get anything like that? And then it's kind of living frugally, right? Like we're going to have these loans now. We have a lot more debt, in making this happen, I think. So it's trying to be frugal. And then I think after that is maybe when I'll start emotionally processing it. I mean, there's been bits and pieces here and there. When I left my friend's house, I had like 2 tears come in my eyes because I was just like, how often do you get to live with your friend in adulthood, like 2 families together? That's nice. But then also like, oh, this is because of a big bad thing that happened. But then I had to get going, right? And I do have a therapist, which is great. But I have been talking to her about, I would say, one of the other tragedies in my life, which people deal with, is a parent passing. And the same thing going to happen. You hit the ground running, planning the funeral, doing the things, grieving. And then like physically, my body would have, I didn't know where they were coming from. Panic attacks, insomnia, just your body processes the grief, processes the trauma. And I was just talking to my therapist about, I wonder what this is going to look like. Not that I want to worry about it now, but just making space for myself over the next year or however long that like things are going to happen in my body because I lived through this. What's my son going to be doing? Is he going to be afraid of rainstorms now? How am I going to be, trying to just pay attention and not ignore it, but try not to worry about what hasn't come yet. But also knowing that I think naturally when trauma and things like this happen, there's that kind of, there is something that happens, like your body does go through it and your mind goes through it and tries to process it. I'm lucky that I'm sad that I have a friend who's gone through friends that have gone through tragedy, but like specifically, I have a friend who, went through Hurricane Katrina, and she's kind of been giving me tips and tricks of different things that she does in her house to prep, and the things that she's experienced just emotionally, and then in the aftermath, even now, So I think I feel blessed in the sense that I maybe can have someone like guide me through it.
That was WUWM Eric Vaughn Fellow Maria Peralta Ariano speaking with Wauwatosa resident Jessica Young, whose home was flooded last month. Residents in Milwaukee, Waukesha, and Washington counties are eligible to request FEMA assistance. You can do that at disasterassistance.gov or by calling 800-621-3362. Milwaukee's 30th Street corridor was one of the hardest hit areas by August's floods. That area is largely developed, consumed by industrial space, homes, and pavement. Floods in 2008 and 2010 caused extensive damage there. That drove the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District to design a 3-basin project. In 2018, the North and East basins were completed. The West Basin is still under construction. Senior Project Manager Jerome Flogel met WUWM Susan Bentz at the site to explain where the project stands and how much it could help reduce future flooding.
All the water in this area is trying to flow north to Lincoln Creek and then out to Milwaukee River and eventually Lake Michigan. That's its natural path before all of this was built. So number one, this was all wetlands, so we're standing on about 8 to 10 feet of fill here everywhere. The homes, everything here is built because they had to fill this in to build on it. With this, there was several small streams. Lincoln Creek used to go down to Capitol and curve around, come back up. It wasn't the straight channel that it is now. So we buried all that and basically put all that water in pipes. This all happened over a long period, a fairly short period of time if you think about it. Kind of in the whole geological history of this area. I'd like to tell that story because we have to rewind that to really understand what's going on here, which is, we built all of this, we built the pipes, put the water where we want to go, but the water still wants to go where it wants to go. And when the pipes are full, when we have these big rain events like we had here in August, there's nowhere to go. It spills out in the streets where it used to have the wetlands and all these streams to spread out and take its time to get where it wanted to go. It doesn't have that anymore. So that's, again, these 3 basins are, it's a really good solution, kind of a middle ground solution. It puts this area back into a fairly natural kind of state of water management, the best we can, and still preserving homes and businesses and kind of keeping the water out of troubles. So we give it these basins to spread out into when it needs to, and then slowly go back out, follow its original path out to Lincoln Creek and the river when the kind of storm subsides and the water levels go back down.
So ultimately, when this basin is functioning along with its partners on the other side of the tracks, they're designed for the water ultimately, if they're at capacity, to hold that water and then gradually convey it to the creek?
Correct.
Okay, so they aren't intended to be ultimately feeding into the treatment plant?
No, that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
The kicker when we have these big rain events is when Lincoln Creek gets to what we call it a flood stage, but even like a 50-year event, 100-year event, somewhere about the 50-year event, which is a rainfall that would just it would be something that would happen probably 2 or 3 times a year. Lincoln Creek's going to reach a level where all those conduits are underwater. And that's what really shuts everything off. And then everything starts backing up and getting capacity. Everything starts backing up into these big box culverts because the water's got nowhere to go. It basically shuts it off until Lincoln Creek can go down and can drain out. So that's what really kind of starts tipping the whole system over. The storms, everything out in the neighborhoods, everything starts backing up like as if your bathtub's clogged up. So when this is built, its primary function is the stormwater. When the city box culvert can't handle all this water coming in from this whole area down to the southwest area of the city, it's going to overflow into 2 more box culverts that we got to somehow squeeze into 35th Street. There again, both of those have to handle a lot of water fast. Again, you can drive your car through either one of those. So
and those are more newly
those
constructed?
will be new constructed. So when we're done,
those aren't constructed yet.
Those are not constructed yet. Those are part of the basin construction.
Okay.
But what they need to do is when this storm gets backed up in 35th Street, which again is taking all the water from this whole area on the southwest side of the city, it's going to overflow into these 2 box culverts, these 2 new ones, and that's what's going to spill into the West Basin. It's going to be taking water off of the storm system that has nowhere to go. It's going to spill into the basin here. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's sized to design, is to be able to take the amount of water that it needs to until that storm passes and Lincoln Creek can drain back down and let that water start flowing out.
So when it's complete, Jerome, is it designed to handle the kind of storm that we saw in August?
No. It's designed to handle a 100-year storm. So it's basically designed to handle, let's say, filling 105-gallon buckets before things will start causing problems.
And that storm in August was a what? In terms
it's
of
off
buckets?
the charts.
Yeah.
We classify it because you just got to follow the line off of the chart, which is it's a 1,000-year event.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's no buckets, you can't.
There's not enough buckets. We can't find enough buckets for that. The good news out of the August storm is, by all accounts, the North and East Basin fared very well. They clearly did their function as far as having water in them. And there's always going to be people have basement backups into these storms. It could be caused by the things within their home, their own lateral, but we did not have the systematic problems like neighborhood-wide in the North and East Basin area that we had here. We looked and we had a lot of basement backup reports here in this neighborhood, and we had a community event out here last Wednesday night, so everybody's had a couple of weeks to kind of work through this. And what I heard from all of the residents, I will acknowledge that I was a little, it was not. I didn't anticipate it was going to be a pleasant experience to get from
It wasn't
people.
warm and fuzzy.
but it was, and that surprised me because almost everybody there had some issues, but universally they said this was not even close to as bad an event as 2010.
And why do you think that is, Jerome? What is your...
Yeah, I don't hang my hat on that too comfortably because it all just really depends on where a rain event like that fell. Because if you look at the map on the rainfall from that event, the 14 inches was somewhere up in this area. But I would say from the reports of the neighbors, it probably was skirted a little bit north of here and didn't fall right here because that rainfall under 14 inches at that point, there's nothing can handle it. The streets are going to be full no matter where you're at. Like the street inlets can't handle it. Nothing can handle it. But this, as I kind of explained, these houses are, Lincoln Creek is right there in the tree line. So they're very connected to what happens in Lincoln Creek. And Lincoln Creek was 10 feet over the last high water mark that we had, which would have been in 2018. When I was in here, the North and East Basins had just gone online. There was much worse problems in the neighborhood here in 2018. Lincoln Creek was 10 feet above that. This time around. So, and the neighborhood was not affected as bad as it probably was in 2018, and definitely not as bad as in 2010. 2010, it wasn't as big of a rainfall. We didn't have 14 inches, but we had two events really large events within about a week or 10-day period of time. So it's all a balance of where the water falls, how saturated the ground is, like where Lincoln Creek is, when that next rainfall hits. But still, overall, really good news. Definitely the North and East Basin did their job. What I kind of explained, again, my best analogy, if you can understand it, is this whole area is the neck of the funnel. Everybody here, despite the railroad tracks, and we're on this side of the railroad tracks, we're on the north side of Capitol. These are all significant geographical divides in the neighborhood. And where the pipes run to, it definitely is very isolated where you're in the neighborhood, but under a rain event like that, kind of everybody here is literally connected. Everybody's connected. So in a rain event like that, if not for the North and East Basin, Capitol Drive under the railroad pass is really kind of one of the canaries in the coal mine because it's such a low area. So that had about 5 feet of water in it. It's a bathtub. It's a low spot. It's always going to have some water sitting in it. But if not for the North and East Basin, there's more water spilling back into this side of the neighborhood, and it definitely has an impact on this west side. Yeah. So how much it was improved due to the North and East Basin being online, I can't tell you that, but it definitely would have been worse without those two.
Yeah. So it was really those basins, because they are fully functioning, and not the current state of the West Basin, that would have contributed to less flooding.
I can't say it wouldn't have contributed at all, but I wouldn't go out on a limb and say that it did help. Mm-hmm. This is a large area. It's 15 acres. And 10 years ago, this was all pavement. This was 100% pavement and buildings. Mm-hmm. It was 100% impervious. Mm-hmm. And now, at least under that event, this captured 14 inches of rain times 15 acres. That's a massive amount of water that stayed right here instead of spilling into Lincoln Creek, instead of spilling out into the street, into the storm sewers. Mm-hmm. So it didn't make it worse, and it probably had some marginal effect. Mm-hmm. But it's not connected yet, and it definitely wasn't like, it's not right now anywhere close to the capacity that it will be when it's built.
Yeah. So what's next here?
Well, yeah, it is getting exciting. So as we've talked in the past, as you can see here, we did quite a bit of work last year along the lines of what we've been working on since 2016, which is just kind of taking this in phases. So last year we kind of did another phase of environmental remediation. This was all abandoned industry, so there's a lot of history on the site. So we took about 6,000 dump truckloads of dirt out of here, put it where it belongs to be in licensed areas that can handle that contaminated dirt. So the next phase will be starting the construction of the actual basin components itself. So the plans for now, starting next year, we're working on design right now. We'll be working in the southwest corner of the basin, which we'll be putting in that first piece of that box culvert. From there, and hopefully by the next end of 2026, we'll have the final design for the basin starting. So in 2027, we'll be starting the final construction, which will be a lot more excavation. There's a lot more dirt that's going to come out of here. We got to make room for 30 million gallons of water. And then putting in all the infrastructure, the conduits. This will have a new outfall to Lincoln Creek. So we got these big box culverts bringing the water in really fast, and then we got a smaller pipe letting it out slowly out to Lincoln Creek when the water goes down.
So completion when?
2029. That doesn't seem so far away considering where we've been.
So was that the initial projection of when it would be complete?
No, the environmental has been really, a big piece that's kind of dragged us out.
So initially it was thought to, it would have been functioning now?
Initially we thought, we'd have it online by now.
Yeah. So is the funding at risk, Jerome?
This is funded through our capital budget, so I mean it's internal. The only risk here to us is it'll get built. It's just we've got to juggle other projects and every year. We're kind of right towards the tail end of our 2026 budgeting process right now. So this is the point. Like right now, we present our 2026 budget to our commission in October. So like kind of last internal negotiations about what projects we move forward, which ones not, what do we delay, what are our priorities. That's all like at the kind of the peak of negotiations right now.
And that process the public can observe and comment on.
Yes, we have coming up in October. We have public hearings too. So they're usually very sparsely populated. We have those for people to come in and have comments and questions. So the public, they're there for the public to come and comment. I think we'll see some neighbors here from this neighborhood, and they're aware of it, and they want to make it known that they want this to go forward.
Jerome Flogel is MMSD's 30th Street Corridor Senior Project Manager. He spoke with WUWM environmental reporter Susan Benz. The next public hearing on MMSD's budget is September 22nd. And did you know you can listen to Lake Effect as a podcast? Search for Lake Effect wherever you get your podcasts to download and listen on demand. Later in the show, we'll tell you about an opportunity for a Victorian-era escape in Lake Geneva. But first, we'll learn about an effort to bring Packers games to all Wisconsinites. That's coming up next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. This Sunday, many Wisconsinites will be looking forward to watching the Packers game. But if you live near the Minnesota border, you may not have access to it. U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin is hoping to change that. She joins me now to talk about a new bill she's put forward called the Go Pack Go Act. Senator Baldwin, thanks so much for being here on Lake Effect.
My pleasure.
So right now, there are communities in Wisconsin that don't always have access to Packers games on television. Why is that?
Well, about 400,000 Wisconsinites currently live in counties that are assigned to media markets outside of Wisconsin. And that means there's certain times where they're not able to watch Packer games. Think about Western Wisconsin and the area that is near the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Many of them get stuck watching Vikings games instead of Packer games because of the media market that they've been assigned to. And this is the case in other parts of Wisconsin also, where they might be in a Michigan media market. And what it means is that they don't get the option, even though they're paying for television through cable or satellite subscriptions, they don't get to watch in-state programming. And that may be a Packer game. It also may mean that they're not getting access to local news and events and information about Wisconsin versus Minnesota or Michigan.
Sure. Now, what is it in this bill that changes what their markets look like so they get access to both television that is from Wisconsin, but also Packers games?
Yeah, so this would require cable and satellite companies to give Wisconsinites an option of Wisconsin media produced in Wisconsin. And it's really not technically difficult for cable providers and satellite providers to give their customers those options. And yet they resist. And that's why we've introduced this legislation to sort of force their hand and give every Wisconsin resident who pays for cable, pays for satellite, give them the choice of stations that broadcast from Wisconsin versus stations that broadcast from the state's, the state media market they've been assigned to.
Now, one of the complaints I've heard from sports fans, especially those who like to watch many different types of games and many different teams playing, is the sometimes exorbitant fees, especially when they're considered teams that are not in their market. Is this bill addressing those fees that television providers are charging for access to games?
So this is much narrower in terms of legislation. There are places throughout the country where, like in Wisconsin, if you live in a county that's proximate to another major media market out of state, that right now they are not required to offer you the choice of programming that originates from your state. And so this addresses that specific issue. In terms of exorbitant fees for sports fans trying to see certain sporting events, just like watching movies and doing so, this particular measure does not address the fees that are being charged. We're just talking about people who are paying for the basic service, but they're getting the basic service from out of state rather than Wisconsin in this case.
Senator Tammy Baldwin represents Wisconsin in the U.S. Senate. Coming up next, we'll learn about Black Point Estate, a historic house and museum in Lake Geneva. That's next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. Black Point Estate is a historic home and museum in Lake Geneva. The 1888 Queen Anne-style house belonged to Conrad Sipe, an influential brewer during the Gilded Age. Dave DeSimone is the director of the historic site. WUWM's Eddie Morales met him at the estate to explore its history and artifacts.
Imagine it's 1888, and this is a 8,000 square foot cottage. It's technically a Three Seasons house, and where there's a furnace now, but they never intended to be here all year long. To put things in comparison, this is 8,000 square feet. The average American home at that point was about 1,100 square feet and would often include multi-generational, so maybe grandma and grandpa live with their kids and their grandkids. So this is a second home. This just sort of it really speaks to the Gilded Age. We're sort of living in another Gilded Age, if you will, where we have, like we talk now about the 1%. Well, in the 1880s, it's Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, Carnegie, DuPont, the names that we still have, Chase, Morgan, these are still names that are, every household kind of knows them. The Sipes aren't in that level, but they're close. And the same thing with Pabst, they all have these vacation homes. So 8,000 square foot home, it's going to have what you would expect for entertaining. First floor, living room, music room, billiard room, and dining room. Second floor, 6 bedrooms, and then the third floor, 7 bedrooms. So in a lot of ways, imagine a big B&B or a historic hotel for your own family. The house, when it was donated to the state of Wisconsin in 2005, so it was Sipe, Schmidt, Peterson. It's all the same family. It just gets passed down through the female side. Fourth generation donates it. Everything that you're seeing here, the furniture, the artwork, the rugs, was left here in 2005. And it's sort of mind-boggling to think about what your house looked like, what my house looked like. Most of us didn't have 125-year-old beds that we were still using. They never updated anything here. They just kept it frozen in time. And there were some personal touches. We have a bedroom that would have had a 1970s green shag rug. Most of the books in the bookcases are from the 1880s through the 1920s, but every so often you'll find a DVD tucked in somewhere. It's just little hints of, over multiple generations. You forget something, it gets put away, and then it's just here forever. And that's sort of the story, a historic house that also is layered over time. So, but we'll head on up to the tower. We're going to go into the tower from a spiral staircase.
DeSimone leads us to the estate's biggest feature, a tower with an impressive view of the lake. He uses a skeleton key to unlock the door.
And then we'll go up this spiral staircase. And then the view over the lake is really pretty remarkable.
Wow.
So the house property sits about 120 feet already above the lake because we're built on a pretty steep bluff. Why we have this tower opposed to like a more balanced traditional style turret, the architect who built this house, his name's Adolf Kudel. He also had just designed a house for the Sipes in Chicago in 1887. And we have some correspondence between the two. I'll paraphrase. It's basically Sipe talking to his architect saying, I love my house in Chicago, but I don't have a view of Lake Michigan. So whatever you do, make sure I'm always going to have a view of Geneva Lake at my lake house. So it's a little bit of conjecture on my behalf, but I think the architect hears that and then decides we're really going to push that tower above, we're above the roof line. So this was always a woodlot, but even as these trees have matured in front of the house, you don't have a view of the lake from the first floor. You don't have a view of the lake from the second floor. You sort of have a view of the lake from some of the third floor bedrooms, but these trees are not getting any taller. You'll always have a view of the lake from where we're at. So we have the house, the gardens adjacent to the property, a bit of shoreline. So you still get the experience of what it was like to come here and do a little bit of time travel. All of our guests arrive through the Lake Geneva cruise line. So that's how many of these homes would have had their initial owners arrive. There were roads around the lake, but they were sort of like cart paths. So imagine at one point, there are 60 piers on this lake around 1900. Last year, there were over 1,100. It's the busiest lake in Wisconsin in terms of boat traffic. I couldn't tell you how many boats are on this, but on a typical weekend, if you're a water skier or a kayaker, you'd probably want to be done by about noon. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of boat wake. So it's pretty spectacular view up here, though.
Just before we came up here, you mentioned something like a newer experience this time around. Mm-hmm. And there's also a new experience called Victorian Living. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So the Institute for Victorian Living is a series that we're running. We're starting it this year. There's a lot of popularity, really beginning with the TV show Downton Abbey and then Bridgerton, where the interest in the Victorian era or the Gilded Age has become popular again in sort of American pop culture. So the Institute for Victorian Living is focusing on etiquette. One of the programs is going to focus on like etiquette and rules of engagement. Another is going to focus on flower arranging and the language of flowers. Like everything's very symbolic in the Victorian era. So in some of those traditions that we still follow today, like if you have a romantic interest, you're probably not going to give her carnations. You're going to give her roses. Carnations are what you might give your mom for Mother's Day. So a lot of those traditions come out of the Victorian era. And then the third installment in this year's series is going to focus on the Victorian weddings that took place not only at Black Point, but at a number of the lake estates that have been around. And we'll have Victorian wedding dresses on display. So it's an opportunity for patrons to come. We encourage people to come in Victorian garb or Victorian hat. There will be a tea service served on the veranda. It will be more immersive than coming for a tour. A tour is wonderful, but it's very much we're presenting information and you're digesting it. The Victorian Living program will allow you to enjoy this estate as maybe you would have been a guest 120 years ago. So I want to head back down? Or?
Sure, yeah.
So it's just always awkward to get back in the staircase. It's like getting into the hull of a boat. I say whatever works for you. Some people sit down. You're a little bit taller. But whatever is comfortable. Just don't hold on to this because it'll close.
Okay. I take DeSimone's advice as I head downstairs. The stained glass windows to my left help light the path with red, blue, and orange colors. Next, DeSimone explains how Sipe entertained his guests and shows me some of the estate's artifacts.
So we're on the first floor of the house, and as I mentioned earlier, it has four main rooms. for entertaining. We're in the billiard room right now, music room. The dining room is directly behind us, and that's where you're hearing that music. It's a digital recording now, but it is of a Stella music box. This is real simple technology. It's a metal disc that's stamped, and you would crank it almost like a Victrola or an early record player, and metal tines are plucking it. This is, once again, in the time period, like record players don't exist. Edison's initial cylinder, which is that first recording of Mary Had a Little Lamb, is a few years off into the horizon, and it would have been a novelty, not something you would play at a nice dinner. So they're very limited on sound, because in a city like Milwaukee, Madison, Chicago, if you're having a fancy party, you could hire a string quartet. Way out here in the countryside, unless you have a family member that could play an instrument, chances are you would need something that's sort of pre-recorded. This is about one of your only options, almost like a music box. Billiard room. The table's one of the oldest artifacts in the house. This table is from 1871. Conrad Sipe purchased this after the Chicago fire for his home in Chicago initially, so he could entertain associates that had been displaced, either personally, like their homes were destroyed, or maybe their businesses. And then in 1888, when this house is built, it's moved up here. They're, of course, a brewing family, and what we're holding up here, these are little barrel napkin rings. And there was a full set. I believe there was as many as 34 of these. And over time, they were given to a family member or to a friend. And when Bill Peterson, that fourth generation owner, donated the house, he made sure that these two would stay here. These would have been probably either a housewarming gift or maybe a wedding gift to Conrad and Katerina. And so I think it speaks a little bit to Conrad and his family as well as his friends. You come to this really formal house or their home in Chicago, fancy dinner, there's silver napkin, and you pull it out and it's a beer barrel. Little tip of the cap to, he knows how he's made his good fortune. And then also, this is kind of fun. It's a Sipe beer stein. And this is pre-Prohibition. Between 1900 and probably 1910 is what we date this. You're seeing Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam is saying Sipe's beer is A-OK. What's going on in this period, there's been a large push for 60, 70 years to outlaw alcohol through the temperance movement. There's also growing anti-German sentiment, especially in the early 19-teens as World War I is ratcheting up. American brewers at this time start to adopt American iconography in their advertising to showcase that they're a little bit more American. Sipe picks Uncle Sam. Jacob Rupert, who is a New York brewer, has the Statue of Liberty, and Anheuser-Busch adopts the American bald eagle. You'll still see that on the Anheuser-Busch bottle. There's like an eagle, and he's holding arrows in one talon and quivers in the other. If you ever tour the Anheuser-Busch plant in St. Louis, right on the building in beautiful sculpture will be the American bald eagle. So it's a latch-ditch attempt right before Prohibition hits that the brewers are saying, well, you could outlaw whiskey and all the hard spirits, but not, beer it's a table beverage. It's we're patriotic, we're going to make it, but of course they don't. They're all caught up. Wine, spirits, and beer are all outlawed. So those are kind of fun little, like I said, doffs of the cap or tips of the cap to Conrad understanding and knowing his good fortune. So what we really would like for people when they're leaving here, what we want them to take away is, the Sipe story, it's interesting. The entrepreneurial story is definitely interesting and relevant in any period. You have a good idea, you work hard, there's opportunities. Good luck is always involved in being successful, but that's, for many people, still the American dream. If you have a great idea and you work hard and a couple things go your way, you could be successful in a line of business. But we also want people to leave here feeling maybe a little bit more excited and empowered about historic preservation, maybe hearing how difficult it was to save this place, and it took 10 years to go through some legal maneuvering. We're zoned residential, the museum's not residential. Would the community accept it? There was opposition. But this family stayed the course, and they wanted to make sure that it could be given to the state of Wisconsin for future generations. Maybe somebody's leaving here and going, the old post office in town is slated for demolition. Or there is a house in my neighborhood that's going up for sale that's 120 years old, and I've always thought about buying an old home, but now I feel like I can do it. We want people when they leave here to just be a little bit more aware of the value of historic preservation and that it's not impossible.
Dave DeSimone is the director of Black Point Estate in Lake Geneva. He spoke with WUWM's Eddie Morales this spring. And that wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Joy Powers. If you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. A Marquette University program that trains teachers on how to share the often overlooked stories of Milwaukee has been cut by the Trump administration. We'll share more about the program and hear reaction tomorrow on Lake Effect. Thanks so much for joining us right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.